All right, Andy, I think we've got 16 people. I'll just keep
Okay.
dragging people in. But Andy is going to give a little talk today on that's your cue in.
Yes. So I'm talking about a data system that the government of Canada keeps under Environment Canada of hydrometric data, which is basically river flow and also depth of the river. I know there are quite a number of folk in WCA who have used this data resource in the past. I got interested in it about 5 or 6 years ago. I somehow tripped over the local water station here in Avening, which is the Mad River near Creemore, and found the station number and recorded it so that when I go paddling, I would know whether it's safe or not to go paddling. I'm going to share my screen and just show you a few photos. So this one kind of got me in high gear. This is the Nottawasaga River near Edenvale. To the government, it's station number 02ED027 at Floss Road 4 and Atkinson Road in Springwater Township. I was doing some work for a client back in April, and I'm driving by, leaving my client's site at the end of the day, and there's Environment Canada, couple of trucks parked at the side of the road, and I pull over to them and they say, "What are you guys doing? Are you working on the water flow station here?" And they probably don't meet too many geeks who drive up in the middle of nowhere and ask them exactly what they're doing and know what they're talking about. So I stopped for 20 minutes and they showed me the equipment they use for testing this. This station is connected to the hydro grid, but you'll often find another one that might look like this. Just a minute. How do I get rid of that? Some of the stations, this particular one happens to be Airport Road just south of Avening at Creemore, which is the Mad River.
Hi, if you're trying to show us the pictures full screen, we're not seeing that.
Oh, so this happens to be the monitoring station at Avening, just south of Creemore. So you can see it's well off the highway, well off the bush. If you didn't know it was here, man, I had to stop on the side of the road and look for it. It's so well hidden. Anyway, I spent a whole bunch of time talking to these guys on the side of the road and asked them how it all worked. I'm going to close this one and open up another screen. So this little tool, these guys are doing it by hand, but the device that I saw was a little hovercraft, basically an underwater drone attached to a rope that went back and forth across the river. And basically it sends Doppler sound waves down into the water, which are reflected back to the scanners, and it can tell at multiple levels how fast the water is moving at different levels within the river, and then also how deep the river is. And then they do a complete profile of the river, and from that, their math guys have figured out algorithms to say, here's how deep the river is, how much water is flowing at a certain point. I'm going to bring up their database, so I'm going to close this one out, and then we'll go straight into their system.
Now, one thing people can do is if you're on your own laptop at home, if you have a second screen, you could follow along by opening the site yourself.
Yes, so we're at wateroffice.ec.gc.ca, and there's a bunch of different ways we can do a station search here. The first one is simply to type in click on the button for real-time station search and type in a name. So we were talking earlier about a favorite paddling river here in Ontario. So I'm going to type in Moira.
Yeah, it's Ontario.
Yep. And I'm going to click on, well, I'm going to stay
Well,
there.
actually, no,
as
station name will get it. Yeah.
Name will get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Moira River pops out as 3 different places. If I want one particular site, I can put an arrow beside it and click on View Report. And we're now on the data. So Carolyn, what day were you on the river?
Oh goodness, that last time I was on this river was 2 years ago before COVID. So I don't remember the exact date.
It wasn't recently.
No, it was, I was too busy working, and then it was such a dry spring that there was just no
Okay.
time between when the ice melted and when.
Okay.
Yeah, I can give you one. It was 2019. Let's see.
Now, what was the flow level you liked? You said
2019 05 12. So you have to go back a couple of years.
Yep.
Yeah, and then 05 12. And I recorded it was in Foxbury 7.948.
Okay, so you like the 12th, so I'm gonna pull that back to the 10th, and then we'll hit.
Well, that's okay to
05.
modern, because then you could say, I know what was good and what it is today, right?
Exactly. I'm just giving you a range so we can see what it's like within a few days of what the day you were on it.
Yeah.
Just a minute. What did we do wrong here?
You probably have to select, apply settings at the bottom right.
No, it's saying when I pushed the start date, it wanted 2020 or later. This
Okay.
particular station may not have been up yet.
Yeah, you know why? Because that's officially historical data. So the current data is only the last year or so. So you have to go to the other feature, which is historic data.
Right, exactly.
But
Okay,
yeah, so it's beyond this thing, historic data.
anyway, yeah, we would click on
Yeah.
historical data search. I'm gonna go back to the Mad River for a moment.
So that's an important thing. The current data is about a year and a half-ish, and then historic can go back, centuries or whatever.
Okay, that's good to know. Let me go back for a moment. I'm going to bring up the Mad River historical, and I'm going to show you some data from.
Okay, somebody's thing is going off. I'm going to turn that off. All right.
Okay, this one gave me too much data. I'm going to type in, since I know where it is, I'm going to type in its name, the place name where it is. So it's looking for the Mad River at evening. Here it is. View report. Oh,
It's interesting.
note that number, 55 cubic meters per second. I'm going to unshare this for a moment and show you a photograph of what 55 meters per second looks like. It's like, oh my God. Where is it? One moment.
Yeah, it's important to note that sometimes there's a flow, sometimes there's just a level. They're both kind of related, as long as, you know, if you take a photo of you were out with a flow or a level and it's a number.
Exactly. I'm going to
Next time you
explain to you
do
what
it, you
both
just
of
look
those
for
numbers.
that flow or level higher,
Yep.
depending on what your experience was. Now, some rivers have both, and some rivers are just a level. I think a flow is a little more complicated.
Yes. Okay. That is 55 meters per second.
Yeah,
Like
so it's in
way
flood,
too much
basically.
river. I've looked at this river carefully and decided that anything above 12 to 14 meters per second means there's no place to pull off for eddies, that if you dumped in the river, you're going for a very long swim that might be 3 or 4 kilometers long. You could be swept into dams of debris that you just can't get past. This is a small river, but because of how much it rips stuff apart, it deserves a whole lot of respect, as does any river. We're just looking at one way of looking at data to help you understand how to go. Let me go back to the application and we'll keep going. Just one moment. So you're now seeing a map with a whole lot of green dots all over it. Are you?
Yeah, that's good. We see it.
Yes. Okay. So as you can see, there are hundreds of stations all across Ontario. Basically, we got to go down to the right-hand corner and just keep expanding the map until you get to an area of the province that you want to look at. Where in Ontario is the Moira? Where does it come out?
I would say start around Tweed, or
Belleville.
where Belleville is. It comes out at Belleville.
Okay, there's I've got my
There,
button right
that's
on
it.
the
You got
Moira
it.
River at Foxborough.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes. Okay. I want to show you something else over here. This is the Beaver River, which some of us were on in April. If you do a search for the name Beaver River in Ontario, there are 4 or 5 different stations. One of them happens to be right here. Another one happens to be someplace over here.
Yeah, the same with the Black River. There's quite a few blacks.
Anyway, exactly. You need to know and be careful if you're going to search on name that you choose the one near the town. You're better off pulling up this map is what we're going at. Before I go on, any questions about the generality of how to find this application? It's at weatheroffice.ec.gc.ca. I'm going to bring up this one and then I'm going to walk you through some specifics of what the data means.
Yeah. Okay, so now we got a good x-axis with time, and we got a y-axis, 2 axes actually. One's, I guess, a discharge, and one is water level, right?
Yes, I'm going to just bring up some data over the past couple of months so I can explain to you what all these numbers mean. Okay, I need to go back a little bit further to find some additional data. Just a minute. So now that the color changed here, before we were dealing with the green line, which was water level, and a yellow line, which was discharge, and they were both marked as provisional. You can see that on or about April 1st, you can see a red dot and a blue dot. So those guys I saw on the side of the road back in April are busy making sure the equipment's working, doing a scan of the river to verify that what's being produced by the machine can be duplicated by this ADCP drone machine. And then when that's finished and they're happy, they then accept the historical, the provisional data becomes accepted as,
Yeah.
as final,
Right.
okay? So when you're doing a search of any station, you'll see these blue dots and red dots. That just means that on that date, a couple Environment Canada guys went to the station, verified the equipment was working, stamped it as good, and now that's accepted data. Now, the meaning of the numbers here. The water level on the left, it's just an arbitrary number. They basically, at each station, every one of them has a different water level, but basically they never want the thing to go to zero. So they set the scale based on, well, we don't want to go to zero, and what's the highest possible value this thing could ever go to at this particular location. Now on the Mad River here, the highest it goes when the ice goes out and jams the river and the water level goes up is about 30 to 40 cubic meters per second. Sometimes it'll hit 55 if it dumps a whole lot of ice up on the riverbanks, but most of the time I've seen this thing running at 25 to 30. So they make that scale on the left-hand side to this. So basically, if you're on the river at one particular time and you're on the river again the next year, you can compare your photos and your river levels. And so if on one day it was at 1.47 and at the next, well, that's going to be a flow rate that's crazy. Let's bring this back down to a smaller period so we can talk about it. Brought it back down to June so that there's less bounce in the data. You can see something happened on June 14th. Either there was a jam, or maybe we had a super big local cloud burst and we really did get that amount of rain to put 20 meters per second into the river. It's possible. But basically what I wanted to say is I would typically paddle this river somewhere below 12 and generally above 6. So we can put our cursor on the line at any particular point and read off the height, which was 1.246 meters. And then I can come back and on another one, read it. Those changes in numbers that you see there from 1.26 meters to 1.88 meters. What's the difference there? 0.088 centimeters. That's an actual rise in water level of 8 centimeters. So these scales are accurate. When it says it went up 0.08, that's 8 centimeters in real water height. So, you know, if you were paddling the river one particular year and you've got your water levels and you're happy with where the rocks were, you come back the next year and you want to know, are the rocks going to be covered or not? You can do the math based on the data from the night before your paddle and see, yes, we're still above last year's level, real level, or we're below last year's real level. Any question on that series? Did I explain it properly?
Yeah.
It's the green line we care about.
What's that?
It's the green line we should be focusing on.
Yeah. Yes. So you put your cursor on the green line at any point in time and date, and that's read off H equals 1.09 meters. And then you can put it on sometime later or before, and you can see it's 1.132 meters. That difference is the real value in meters.
Yeah, but just one cautionary note, some rivers have the height, some have the discharge only, some have both. They're really,
Oh, absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
so as long as you stick to, in this case, we have both, you just grab one of the scales and when you did the river, you write it down with your photos, and the next year you're going to do it again. You look and say, oh, it was pretty good at 2.32 and it's, 2.5. Okay, it's going to be higher and faster, or it's 1.7 and we're dragging on the bottom, So after 2 years, you get an idea. The other thing I've used in the past is I've talked to people that have done the river or outfitters, and they would give me a number saying 50 cubic feet per minute is a good number for this river. So that's what we, hopefully get. So
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So one of the things we did on some of the rivers is you look at the yearly cycle, and then you could plan out pretty accurately, okay, if he's saying 50 is good, we're shooting for, I don't know, 1st of June. And hopefully the 1st of June, things, work out. Historically, it looked good on June the 1st. This year was a funny year. Everything was like 4 or 5 weeks ahead of schedule. So the water on June 1st was like, July 1st water levels. There wasn't a lot of, snow in the woods and water in the river.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna pop back over to the Beaver River and look at that for a moment.
One of the nice things about using the discharge rate is that if you have one river that you know what the good are, it allows you to compare it to another similar river and see what the discharge is there. It'll give you an idea of what to expect. For instance, if you paddle the Madawaska, it's a river that that's very similar to the Petawawa. If you know the Madawaska and you see what the rates are on the Petawawa, that'll give you some decent idea of what you can expect. It'll look like when you go there.
Yes.
If you use the gauge height is specific only to that river at that location.
Exactly.
You can't extrapolate from it. Yeah.
No, exactly. No, this is real-time data from a specific location, and all they're telling you is the height of the water and, the and the flow through that location. You need to make all of your decisions based on, you know that this flow level is safe to paddle at this particular location. It might not be safe on another river, another location, and all of that stuff. I'm gonna stop sharing this one. I'm gonna show you 2 pictures as an example of all of this. So you're seeing a photograph of a tree across a river. Are you seeing that?
Yep.
Yes, okay. This was March of 2017. This is about half a kilometer upstream from that flow station that evening. I'm gonna go back and show you another photograph of the same place. Is this one coming up? Are you seeing this one? No.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Okay, that's the same tree 4 years later. So you can see in 4 years how much more wider the river is beyond where the tree stumps are. Now somebody has gone through and cut out and removed the tree and made it safe for passage. So those trees you just saw a few minutes ago from 4 years ago are now lying flat in the water, not a hazard to anybody. But basically in 4 years, each spring, the mad has made itself just a little bit wider. And so it's now 15 to 20 feet wider than it was 4 years ago. Incredibly destructive. You think, oh, it's a nice, easy paddling river. It is, but because it's so destructive on its footprint, you got to do a whole lot of scouting before you hop on this one and go for a paddle. I was glad I could find this photo. I'm not going to tell you who's the person who hops in here regularly to chainsaw these trees out, but if it wasn't done, it'd be a dangerous river to go paddling in. Let's go back to the application. So we're back on real-time data for the Beaver River. Gary, what day were we on the Beaver River? About March 28th, 29th, something like that?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Just give me a second here.
I think that was a close enough number. Let me scale this down a bit so that we're getting a better.
And it was March 27th.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up 22 to 30. So you can see the line for March 27th there. For something that was planned 3 days before, it was a pretty good hit to almost hit the peak and have a pretty good paddle.
I've actually got a movie of it. If you want me to share my screen, I'll give you people an idea what it looks like.
Sure, go ahead. Let's
Short one.
show a movie for what this level looked like. You can see that it was 8 meters per second. Let me stop my sharing. Go ahead and throw your movie up and people can see what 8 meters per second looks like.
It was a rainy day. So you can see the river is kind of almost in flood. Not quite flood, but it's up there.
I would have to say pretty optimum conditions.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
lots
it's
of
a
good
nice
water.
class 1
Everything
river.
was safe, nice fast flowing. We didn't have to do a whole lot of work.
Yeah. I don't know. I might have another movie here. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Just an idea. A lot of sweepers, got to watch out for. But it's just a nice river, you know, in the spring. Class 1 and motoring along 10K an hour. You can see there's lots of sweepers on the side. Got to be careful not to get stuck somewhere.
I
So
think
there's
if I
something
remember-
happening downriver here. We're just
Yeah,
buying
yeah.
some
I
time
seem to
to
remember
take a look.
that just at this point, at this
Oh,
bottom
so there
corner
was
there,
some
we had
issue
to
up here
stop.
with you guys
because-
and we decided to go the other side.
Yep.
I don't know, Andy, what do you remember the issue was?
The river was blocked. You'll see
Oh,
on the
river was
river left,
blocked.
we're
Okay,
standing there waving you off to say, pull over, pull over.
okay, so there's
That big tree
trees
up in
all
the
across
foreground
the
there
river.
was a big dam. There was a complete blockage right across the river. That's us walking on the other shore, going to investigate, to see if there's actually a way through it. And we actually had to portage around the dam.
I just sped it up a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll speed it up here a bit. We're just hopping across. And we're back on the river. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing now, Andy.
Okay, let me go back into the application. Any questions about the generalities of this application?
So what was the level? Because I'm gonna write that down.
At the Beaver River. So on March 27th at midnight, it was 8 meters. Let's shorten that up and we'll see during the day what it was. March 27th at 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll take 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was just at 7 meters per second.
Okay, and what was the level? Because the level is what I normally write down.
Okay,
7 point.
water level is 7.32,
Okay,
31, somewhere in there.
okay. So I'm just writing that on my phone
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
So
It was
future reference.
a good day to be out. I'm gonna just expand this back and look at a whole year's data, and you can see how much the thing fluctuates over a year. A whole year's data is way too much.
Well, it
But
does
it
show you
gives you
that,
a-
you know,
a general-
January, February, there's the melts coming through, March, right?
Exactly.
It does show you the cycling through the years. If you had multiple years, you'll see that going up and down. So typically in the spring, it's high. summer's low, fall comes up a little bit, and then the spring again does the high, low, comes up a bit. So sometimes the river is good in the fall too. And you get some rains.
Yep. I'm gonna pop back out to data for a minute and hopefully it's going to let me back into map. Okay, it's okay. I've got one here. So this is Willow Creek near Minising. The reason it's here is that, well, the useful to us as paddlers is that 2 miles downstream from this particular flow station is the parking lot for access to the Minising Swamp. So this, I happened to find this station last week, and you can see that last week, because of the rain, the thing suddenly shot from 2.4 meters per second to 4, basically filling that ditch. I'm going to just back up and let's have a look at what 6 months of data is so we can see what spring flood levels are like. So on the right-hand side, we have the recent stuff at 4 to 5 meters. But in the spring, it's anywhere up to 10 meters per second. If you weren't careful, you might look at this data on the right-hand side. I'm going to scale this back down for a moment. So it might be possible that you're looking at this scale and saying, hey, 6 meters per second, there's lots of water. Let's go for a paddle in this creek. And getting partway down this creek would not be a problem. But anyone who knows the Minising Swamp well knows that it fills up in the spring as all the spring meltwater comes along and then slowly discharges over about a month to 6 weeks. Once that discharge is gone, if you hit one of these numbers for Willow Creek and tried to paddle into the swamp, you'd be paddling into a mud pit. You probably would get 2 to 3, maybe 4 kilometers of, hey man, the water disappeared, I'm paddling in mud, and how the hell do I get out of here? That's what comes from just looking at data off a government website here without understanding the full context. The data can lie to you and tell you it might be a good paddling day when, gee, the lake's a little bit dry today. That's just one example where the data can lie to you. Any other rivers while I'm here that we want to look up in Ontario that you might be interested in? Let's go have a quick look at it.
One of the things I think we probably try to understand is what is the difference between historic data and real-time data? I know there's 2 maps on the system. Historic to me sounds like, I don't know, a year or 2 and older. Or,
Right.
or sometimes there's been, you know, dams or stations that were discontinued. So if you pull
Exactly.
a map, maybe you can scroll over a few of those. There's different colors. I think there's like green and brown and red, something like that. And red means it's discontinued and brown means something else. And I'm going from memory a bit here, but
Yeah. You're getting into an area of knowledge that I haven't quite hit that yet, and I would have to do some of my own
Okay.
research to figure that out.
Yeah.
But basically, under real time, you can click on your station, and sometimes it will give data going back several years. So if you need to look 2 years back, if you need to look further than what's being presented under real time, then go into historical for that same
right.
station.
And why?
But keep in mind that
Yeah, why I bring
keep in mind that
is sometimes when we're reading like old Nostoggans for research, like say I want to do the Moisey, and there's an article from 10 years ago,
right.
kind of figure out by the article that person wrote it like the year before, and they usually say it was June or July or something. And you can go back to that time frame and have an idea, oh, this is like, I don't know, 5 to 6, you know, cubic meters or something, you know?
Yep.
So it's good using the data that way to connect it to an old article. And you can go back, you know, 20, 30, 40 years on these articles.
This is true.
We did it on this date, because on a river, it's very important to date, because it changes, you know, day by day, month by month, for sure, right? So
You bet.
you're like piecing the story together, trying
So going,
right week for
Yep.
your trip.
so going forward, in order to have good data 5 years from now, write down the station name and also write down its, as in Nottawasaga River near Edenvale, but also write down the station number, which would be 02ED027. And in fact, record its location, because the government does have the right to move these locations. And they do move the stations from time to time. Anyway, just saying. Anything else we want to talk about here? Any questions people might have about this stuff? Oh, by the way, this same network also exists in the United States. Look up ADCP river flow on Google, and someplace you'll find a government site in a whole bunch of these rivers on it as well, of their own rivers. I got silence here. Anybody got anything to say? It's killing me.
Oh, I got a question. This stuff is amazing. I'm sort of just figuring it out now. And a friend of mine who I paddle with regularly always posts the levels and the flow on his
Yes.
Facebook. And
Oh yeah.
I've met Facebook until this last year. And I had guests coming, and I thought the river was too low, but he said he did it at 7.5 and it was at 8. And I went and I looked at the river and I thought, it's going to be horrible, but it was fine. It was just exactly how he said. So it's interesting putting faith into this, this website sort of, but it worked. And I even questioned the Thames Valley people about it, and they called me back. They were really quick with information. But I when we were paddling on Saturday, I came across a gauge underneath the bridge at the university, and that's not that's not on the website, that marker, but it was a clear gauge, and I've seen them once or twice. Or is that got to do with private interests, or is that got to do with this website, or Or do bridges have that? I don't know.
It could be for the MTO. It could also be for a university research project if it's right on the
Exactly.
university project property. And quite frankly, a lot of them could be university stuff even outside of the university grounds. There's a lot of research projects on lakes.
Right. Yeah. No, it was clear as day, and I sort of thought, wow, I've never noticed that. And but I didn't know what it applied to. I know the university does do fishing projects down there.
Anyway,
One other link I can share. There's a place in Minden called Boatworks. And I'll
yes,
share on my screen here to show people what their website has to offer here. So this is Boatworks, and you can see there's a place that says water levels, Beaver Creek, Black, Crow, Laura Gorge. So I clicked on the Moira River here, Electric Chair, Belleville. So this is the bottom end. But this gives you a pretty good yearly map of the discharge. Now this is discharge, not height, but if you went to the thing Andy just showed you, you would relate this would be, they probably get the data from there.
yes,
So it's another good spot. And they've got all the local rivers, salmon, etc. Moira. So you can see the data is pretty crude just by month here, but it gives you an idea. And of course, a lot of people do the Black, the Gull River in Minden, the Lower Mad, the Magnetawan, Mississauga in Kawartha Park, Moon River, Oxtongue, not so much, Petawawa, Bill mentioned, a few others. There's the Upper Petawawa. So this is another good site to refer to, and it's you click on it and you get a really quick piece of data. So the Magnetawan, of course, in the spring, it's crazy. When I do it, it's kind of in this zone, end of May, early June. And this is, reasonable levels. You're not going to kill yourself. This is like suicidal. But you can see the summer goes down like 10, and then it comes back up a little bit in the fall. So if you're shooting for this level, there's a possibility in the fall to do it. But you're talking November, that time frame gets a little cool. So it's another resource you can look at.